Tong Yen started her new job and faced an unexpected shock. Her new boss was her ex-boyfriend Yun Chung, whom she had not seen for 5 years. On the first morning she felt tense. The CEO looked familiar, and when she recognized him she quickly put on sunglasses, hoping to avoid attention. She tried to leave, but an assistant asked her to review some designs because the head of design was unavailable. With no way out, she followed the assistant to Yun Cheng's office and pretended to be a designer. Yun Cheng reviewed documents while she waited. He asked her to make coffee and, after tasting it, mentioned it reminded him of an old friend. Tong Yen gave a brief reply and moved on to present the new product concept. Memories of college flooded back as she spoke, remembering how he once helped her with studies. Yun Cheng had already recognized her but stayed silent. When she stumbled, he caught her by the waist to steady her. She removed her sunglasses and greeted him.
好久不见，廖云成.
As they exchanged a few words, he let go and she reflexively grabbed him, causing both to fall. They locked eyes in an awkward moment before he stood and returned to his seat. In that instant, the past and present collided, setting the stage for ex-boyfriend and amp boss. Tong Yen asked if her design would be approved. Yun Cheng said it lacked impact and rejected it. She admitted she had pretended to be someone else and asked him not to mix personal history with work. He replied that he was only following procedure. Frustrated, she prepared to leave. Yun Cheng stopped her with a question about whether she wanted to give up. She paused, calmed herself, and asked what he wanted. Their conversation shifted toward a more familiar rhythm. The assistant, Chi, entered and saw the tension. Yun Cheng gave him a warning look, so he stayed and continued the process while Tong Yen answered questions for the record. After the meeting ended, Yun Cheng and Chi returned to the car. She noticed how unusually kind Yun Cheng had been to Tong Yen and wondered why she had ended their relationship. He started to comment but stopped when Yun Cheng gave him a sharp look. Inside the building, Tong Yen reached for her phone and noticed the recorder on her desk. She called Chi, who told her to return it to the company car waiting at the front entrance. When she arrived, she knocked on the window and saw Yun Cheng inside. She handed over the recorder, but he told her to get in if she wanted the review results. She joined him, and they exchanged the questions that had lingered between them. Yun Cheng asked why their relationship had ended. Tong Yen replied that he never cared about anyone's feelings and always demanded answers. She stepped out of the car and left him sitting in silence. Later that day Yun Cheng appeared at the office again. Tong Yen was surprised to see him. He said he needed documents from the head of design, though he knew that person was absent. After checking his watch he asked her to drive him to the airport, explaining that he could not drive himself. On the way he asked about her mother's health and learned she had cancer. Hearing her calm description of that difficult time, he realized how frightened she must have been and felt a deep ache. He told her life would be different now that he was back. Tong Yen looked at him but said nothing. When they reached the parking lot, Tong Yen mentioned the high fees. Yun Cheng told her to leave her car at home and said he would pick her up later. He patted her head before walking away, leaving her with a sudden shift in feeling. Curious, she asked her friend Qiufan why a man would leave his car like that. Qiufan guessed he was trying to win her back. Tong Yen doubted it. Qiufan predicted he would soon give her a simple but meaningful gift and insisted Tong Yen would accept it. Tong Yen refused to bet, but Qiufan stayed confident. During a live stream, Qiufan pulled Tong Yen on camera. A viewer sent a large gift, jumped to the top of the leaderboard, and asked for Tong Yen's account. Qiufan pleaded with Tong Yen to agree, saying it would help her streaming career. Tong Yen agreed on the condition that it was the last time. While working later, Tong Yen received a message from the top supporter asking about her boyfriend. She replied that she was married, had a 2.5-year-old child, and planned to have another soon. That night Yun Cheng drank with a business partner. When approached by a woman, he used the same line Tong Yen had given the online fan. He then messaged Tong Yen, asking her to pick him up at the airport the next morning. The next day she drove to meet him. He handed her a gift he had made himself, a dish she once loved. She thanked him and felt relieved she had not taken Qiufan's bet, which would have cost her a month of bubble tea. Yun Cheng asked her to drive him to his company. There he checked on a design review with Wu, who said the process was ongoing and the edits still were not right. Yun Cheng asked Tong Yen which poster stood out most. She chose one featuring a striking woman. He explained that posters should show key details at a glance and suggested removing extra text. He adjusted the colors and told her to contact him if she needed help. Tong Yen delivered the revised poster to Wu, and this time he approved it without complaint. After returning home, Tong Yen chatted with the top supporter from the livestream. She assumed he was a teenage boy trying to flirt and mentioned he wanted to rescue a stray dog. Then she learned he was 29, which surprised her. Chiu Fun overheard the conversation and asked what was going on. Tong Nian brushed it off, claiming she was only talking about spring and how the neighborhood cats were in mating season. Chiu Fun could not get more information and left. Soon a coworker rushed in with urgent news. The company logo on the promotional booklet was fake, and the screenshots were poorly cropped. The booklets could not be used. Only 30 minutes remained before the exhibition began, and local printing shops required advance booking. Tong Nian considered calling Yun Chung but hesitated. At that moment the top supporter, who was Yun Chung, sent her a message. She explained the problem. Yun Chung asked Wu to send the correct logo files, quickly fixed them, and sent them back. Tong Nian felt relieved and grateful for the unexpected help. Later she heard that Yun Chung had been injured. She immediately requested leave, bought flowers, and went to the hospital. At the entrance a guard stopped her, saying visitors were not allowed. Tong Nian insisted that CEO Wu had approved her visit. Yi Qing stepped out and introduced herself as Yun Cheng's fiancé. She said he was still unconscious. Shocked, Tong Nian handed her the flowers and chose not to go inside. After Tong Nian left, Yi Qing told the guard to discard the flowers and forbid anyone from bringing gifts to Yun Chung. Feeling unsettled, Tong Nian lay on a bench outside. Half asleep, she thought she saw Yun Chung and whispered that she regretted their breakup and wanted to stay with him. Her mind drifted to an old memory. Years ago she had brought him a slap cake, claiming she had made it herself, but she forgot to remove the price tag and Yun Chung noticed it came from the shop near the campus gate. Later, Tong Nian went to karaoke with friends, where they dared her to confess to the first person pinned on her WeChat list. That person was Yun Chung. After drinking too much, she called him and admitted her feelings. Yun Chung asked if she was serious or only completing the challenge. Her friends said his response would show the truth. Tong Nian waited for him outside and overheard strangers saying she was not good enough for him. Yun Chung arrived late and apologized. Tong Nian felt disappointed, sensing that he cared only about his research. She began to wonder if their relationship still mattered. Soon after, she overheard a professor tell Yun Chung about a full scholarship offer from Columbia University and urge him to accept. Learning this without any word from him broke her heart. She sent a message ending the relationship. The next morning she woke to find Chiu Fan at her side, worried. Chiu Fan explained that Tong Nian had ignored severe stomach pain. Wu had returned unexpectedly, found her in distress, and brought her home, preventing a serious problem. Surprised, Tong Nian thanked them quietly and ate the porridge Chiu Fan brought. She knew she needed to protect her job. Later she brought coffee to Wu, who was annoyed because he had asked for it the previous day. She promised it would not happen again, and he told her to write a self-critique, adding that no one would bother to read it anyway. Soon after, as the company faced an imminent buyout, Tong Nian received a message from the top supporter on the livestream leaderboard. The sender warned that their data had been deleted and they could not reach her in time. Meanwhile Yi Qing visited Yun Chung. He told her to stop touching his phone and reminded her that deleting messages would not erase anything. He explained that his phone had no password because he could recover all data and reminded her of his technical skills. Declaring his injury minor, he left the hospital, leaving Yi Qing angry. Changtian Company sent a representative to discuss the acquisition. Wu asked Tong Nian to greet the visitor, and she was surprised to see Yi Qing arrive. Yi Qing admired Tong Nian's earrings and offered a trade. Tong Nian said they were inexpensive and offered to give them away. Yi Qing removed her own earrings in exchange, mentioning they were a gift from a brand and of little importance to her. Yi Qing then asked if Tong Nian still had Yun Cheng's car keys. Tong Nian handed them over, noticing the earrings in her own hand and feeling a wave of sadness. Around them employees discussed the situation. CEO Wu opposed selling the company, but a partner had used it as collateral and defaulted on the loan. Wu had arranged for the company to become a supplier for Changtian, forcing a purchase. Wu addressed the staff, explaining the circumstances and offering a choice. They could accept accommodation arranged by Changtian and sign an agreement, or decline and still receive payment. Tong Nian chose not to stay, unwilling to work in the same environment as Yi Qing. That evening she and Chiu Fan went to a bar. Tong Nian admitted she knew finding a job would be hard, but had not expected so many rejections in one day. She decided to drink heavily and began a long night with her friend. Yun Chung arrived to find her drunk and carried her out. She insisted she was sober, tried to walk straight, and repeated the same antics she had once done when they were dating. She told him she regretted the breakup and wanted to stay together. He took her home. When she woke the next morning she felt embarrassed. Yun Chung gave her documents and asked her to sign an agreement to work at his company. She refused. He then showed her a photo from the bar and warned that their teacher would disapprove of her behavior. Worried about the consequences, she agreed to sign. She handed the earrings back to him, asking that he return them to his fiancée. Yun Chung recognized them as Yi Qing's earrings and looked surprised. The next morning, Tong Yen arrived at the company and found Yi Qing already there, visibly displeased. Yi Qing claimed that arriving late and leaving early might work in a small firm but not in a large organization. Tong Yen pointed out it was only 7:55, but Yi Qing insisted that everyone should arrive 15 minutes early. Yun Chung entered and confirmed that Tong Yen was on time. He instructed staff to complete her onboarding. He also asked the secretary to list employees planning to marry in the second half of the year so the company could host a group wedding. When the secretary jokingly asked if he should be included, Yun Chung dismissed the rumor and said he had never mentioned marriage. He warned that anyone spreading gossip did not belong in the secretary's office. He clarified that he had no fiancée and told everyone to stop making assumptions. Tong Yen felt a quiet relief hearing his statement. She was assigned to the after-sales service department, where the manager gave her a quick tour before leaving to handle another matter. A customer soon arrived, and Tong Yen had to greet them. She struggled to answer several questions and felt embarrassed. Yun Chung stepped in, directing the customer to the company website for details and offering to arrange a Q&A session. He reassured them that a small issue should not raise doubts about the company's capabilities. Afterward, Tong Yen asked why she had been placed in after-sales. Yun Chung explained that the manager was highly skilled and encouraged her to learn from him. Determined to improve, she studied closely with the manager and asked co-workers whenever she had questions. Her performance improved quickly. Yun Chung left training manuals on her desk, and her work advanced even further. He later asked her to remove him from her phone blacklist, which reminded her that she had blocked him. One evening, Yun Chung stayed late to finish work. Tong Yen invited him to dinner, and they went out together. They chose a street food stall and unexpectedly met Qiu Fun and her boyfriend Bo Yang. Both pairs were surprised to run into each other. After the meal, everyone returned to Tong Yen's apartment, where the atmosphere felt tense. Bo Yang asked her to cook, but she reminded him they had agreed that whoever felt hungry would cook, and she was not hungry. Bo Yang exchanged a look with Yun Chung, prompting Tong Yen to head to the kitchen anyway. While she cooked, Bo Yang told Yun Chung that he was Tong Yen's childhood friend and had come to ask if she wanted to be with him. Yun Chung replied that he and Tong Yen were only colleagues. Qiu Fun watched in silence, confused by the sudden rivalry. Tong Yen served hot pot, and Bo Yang helped with the dishes. Yun Chung immediately pointed out reasons the food was unhealthy, then served her food himself. The two men exchanged remarks while Qiu Fun tried to follow the tension. After dinner, they played a game where the winner could give orders to two players. Qiu Fun won and chose the players with numbers 2 and 3 to kiss. Tong Yen and Bo Yang held those numbers. Bo Yang pulled her closer, and Yun Cheng's displeasure was obvious. The games continued, and Yun Chung drank heavily until he rested on the sofa. Tong Yen prepared to call a driver, but he handed her his keys and asked for a ride.
廖云成，学长。
She drove him home. At his place, he moved closer, creating an awkward moment, then went to shower. When he returned, they spoke about the evening. Tong Yen explained that Bo Yang was only like a brother. Yun Chung questioned whether brothers behaved so closely. She replied that she did not have a brother. He brought up their past. Deciding to settle their feelings, Tong Yen mixed a drink she called a forgetfulness drink and offered him a glass. She said that once they drank it, they would start over as strangers. Yun Chung finished the drink and said they were starting over now, then asked if he could pursue her and be her boyfriend. Later, Tong Yen told Qiu Fun what had happened, and Qiu Fun was surprised by Yun Cheng's reaction. Soon after, Yun Chung called a company-wide meeting to introduce a major beach project planned for the second half of the year. He explained the challenges ahead and announced that he would select top performers from different departments to join the team. Tong Yen attended but found herself distracted, watching him instead of listening. When the list was revealed, her name was included. Later, Yun Chung spoke to her privately and clarified that she was chosen for her strong performance, not for personal reasons. She assured him she understood and would work hard. Soon after, while approaching him again, she was so focused on him that she walked into a wall. Embarrassed, she followed him into his office where he told her to relax, noting that everyone else had already left. That evening, Yun Chung met Yi Qing to return the earrings that had ended up with Tong Yen. Yi Qing dismissed the matter as a simple exchange between friends, but Yun Chung said worn jewelry should not be passed to someone else. Around the same time, a coworker reminded Tong Nian about CEO Wu's farewell party. She nearly forgot, but quickly joined the group. Wu reflected on building the company from the ground up and expressed sadness that it was being sold. He offered advice and small gifts to the staff. Outside the event, Tong Nian saw Yun Cheng waiting. Her co-workers left, teasing that someone had come to pick her up. She asked when he planned to buy the company. He explained that after a trip to England he realized the company lacked funds to continue and that Wu had recommended her as a sharp arrow he should make good use of. Days later, while at work, Tong Nian noticed production manager Zhuang speaking quietly with another person and instinctively took a photo. Zhuang confronted her, asking if she had captured their conversation. She denied it, saying she had been eating breakfast with both hands full and suggested he was mistaken. Soon she received a message that Changtian's shipment was substandard and had been cancelled. Concerned, she approached Zhuang, who claimed all procedures were followed. Drawing on her past experience with Changtian, she argued that their quality made such a cancellation unlikely and showed a design that did not match Changtian's blueprints. Zhuang dismissed her concerns, saying the issue belonged to higher management and warning her not to interfere. Determined, Tong Nian went to the department manager, who promised to report the matter but admitted it might be beyond his control. Still seeking answers, Tong Nian asked several co-workers about the Changtian problem, but no one was willing to help. She then ran into Yun Cheng and explained the situation. He already knew about the issue and told his secretary to investigate. Soon after, Zhuang called her to discuss the matter and invited her to his office. He appeared concerned and said the blueprints were stored on his computer, which had stopped working, and asked her to take a look. While she examined the computer, he moved close and tried to touch her. She told him to stop. Yun Cheng arrived in time, struck Zhuang, and took her out of the room. He was upset that she had met the production manager alone. Tong Nian said she had sent him a message before going, but he warned her about the danger and asked what might have happened if he had been late. She promised to follow his guidance in the future. Later that night she kept thinking about the incident. Yun Cheng called to check on her and said the sound of his typing might help her sleep. She listened to the quiet rhythm and drifted off. The next day the manager assigned her and Ru Yi to replace wiring in the workshop. While counting the required pieces, Ru Yi asked her to confirm the number. Tong Nian checked and reported 24. Ru Yi asked her to write it down and sign. She complied, noticing Ru Yi's formal tone but thinking little of it. When the delivery worker arrived, he said there were 24 cubic meters of wiring and asked for her signature. She was shocked. She had written the number without a unit, and by default the order was processed as cubic meters. Feeling responsible, she apologized, but the manager said he would handle the situation. While she remained in the workshop, Yun Cheng came to see her and said senior management was also reviewing the problem. He pointed out that the job required 24 pieces, not cubic meters, and the supplier should have questioned such an odd request. He suspected someone had set her up, and Tong Nian realized he believed the mistake was intentional and aimed at her. Soon after, Ru Yi was called in for questioning about the wiring incident. Yun Cheng produced a recording of the call that confirmed the order details. Ru Yi claimed someone else had filled out the form and that she only wrote down 24 cubic meters. She added that if the warehouse lacked stock, they would find substitutes. She then accused Tong Nian of framing her, but no one believed it. Angered, Ru Yi complained that Tong Nian had kept her out of Changtian, spent her time pleasing managers, and avoided real work. She threatened to release photos showing Tong Nian flattering the production manager Zhuang. Tong Nian responded by showing her own photo of Ru Yi meeting privately with Zhuang, asking who would be more believable. Back at the office, coworkers urged Tong Nian to check her internal email. There she found that Ru Yi had resigned and sent a picture of Tong Nian with Zhuang, accusing her of favoritism and forcing her departure. Tong Nian was caught off guard by the move. Yun Cheng later told Tong Nian not to let the gossip bother her. She replied that it would fade over time. Meanwhile, he gathered evidence of Zhuang's misconduct and presented it to the board. The directors dismissed the proof, saying the subsidiary was about to be listed and advising him not to create problems. Through colleagues, Tong Nian learned that Zhuang had a history of using his position to harass staff, including herself. Determined to act, she decided to report him under her real name and asked coworkers for supporting evidence, promising to protect their identities. They agreed to help. Soon after, Yi Qing called Tong Nian to warn that the listing was at a critical stage. She asked if Tong Nian had any demands the company could meet to settle the matter quietly. Tong Nian recognized the attempt to cover up the case and replied that if the company refused to address it, she would handle it herself. True to her word, Tong Nian published a report about Zhuang online under her real name. The post spread quickly and drew heavy attention. Later she stepped out for a walk, distracted and nearly hit by a car. Yun Cheng pulled her to safety. They returned to her apartment and found Qiufan hiding behind the sofa, shaken. Qiufan explained that someone had tried to break down the door and cut the power. She had been too frightened to leave until Tong Nian came back. Tong Nian realized the break-in was likely retaliation for her report. She asked Qiufan about her plans for the next few days. Qiufan said she would visit her parents and soon received a call from Bo Yang, who was on his way to pick her up. She left quickly, promising to explain later. Yun Cheng then revealed a cut on his hand and asked for help. Tong Nian cleaned and bandaged the wound. He suggested she stay at his place for a while, saying the injury happened because of her and that she should help with the bandages over the next few days. She hesitated but eventually agreed. When she asked about the production manager, Yun Cheng said he had gathered strong evidence, though the board still protected Zhuang. He assured her he could handle the situation and told her to rest, mentioning he had changed the sheets that morning. She wondered where he would sleep, and he said the sofa. Feeling awkward, she went to bed while he stayed in the living room. The next morning Yun Cheng prepared breakfast. As she ate, the news reported that Zhuang was under investigation for embezzlement and bribery. Tong Nian felt relieved to see that justice was finally being served. Later that day, Yi Qing met with Yun Cheng to discuss the fallout from Zhuang's dismissal. She warned that the board viewed Tong Nian as a source of controversy and might use her presence on the project team to block Yun Cheng's work. To avoid conflict, Yi Qing suggested removing Tong Nian from the team. While looking for Yun Cheng, Tong Nian overheard the conversation. Yi Qing noticed her and advised that she resign to prevent further trouble. Yun Cheng cut the discussion short and told Yi Qing to stop interfering. He later found Tong Nian and assured her she was on the project because of her abilities and that he would handle any board pressure. That evening Tong Nian told Qiufan what she had heard and wondered if she should step aside. Qiufan asked whether Yun Cheng had shown any anger. When Tong Nian said he had comforted her, Qiufan urged her to trust his judgment and support him. She reminded Tong Nian that their earlier breakup had stemmed from fear that Yun Cheng would leave, not from anything he had done. Pride, she said, should not ruin a relationship with someone who cared deeply. Thinking it over, Tong Nian decided to act. She approached Yi Qing and stated that she would not leave the project because Yun Cheng trusted her. She added that she and Yun Cheng were now together and warned Yi Qing to stay professional and avoid undermining her. Yun Cheng arrived during the exchange and backed Tong Nian, instructing Yi Qing to address him formally as CEO Liao. Later Tong Nian returned with Yun Cheng to his home, where he had already prepared the items she used daily, making the space feel as comfortable as her own. That evening she sent a thank you message to the top supporter from the livestream leaderboard, and Yun Cheng's phone vibrated at the same time. When she sent another message, his phone vibrated again. She quickly realized he was the mysterious supporter. He explained that it had started after she blocked him on WeChat, but she brushed off the excuse and asked him to do something to earn her forgiveness. That evening he wore a pair of cat ears and brought her fruit, a sight that amused her and reminded her of how far they had come. The next morning she woke to find him already at work. She took out their old school uniforms, slightly tight but still wearable, and suggested they visit their former campus. Together they returned to the place filled with shared memories. While there she admitted that she had ended their relationship years earlier after overhearing the principal tell him about plans to study abroad. She had feared he would leave her, so she left first. Yun Cheng understood and assured her that he never intended to abandon her. His mother called during their visit, and he spoke warmly of Tong Nian, referring to her as his daughter-in-law. Standing in the familiar setting, they embraced, closing the chapter of their story where it had begun. The series ends with that moment. So the moral of the story is never block your ex on WeChat, never bet bubble tea on love, and never underestimate a boss who can fix logos, cook gifts, wear cat ears, and still run a company, because he might just be your biggest livestream fan and future husband.